And again, welcome to the Copenhagen Fintech Lab. And for the first panel of today, actually, that is called The Pandemic versus the Financial Ecosystems. With me today, I have Anne Rosenberg, calling in from New York, I believe. Hi, Anne. Bradley Busetto from Singapore. Hi, Brad. And with me in the studio, Allan Polack from PFA. So just a quick round, and I'll start out with you, Anne, if you could just do a quick introduction of yourself.
Yes, thank you so much, and a big congratulations to the Copenhagen Fintech event, which actually is taking place at the same time. You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, good. Where we have the big Unga Week starting today that we speak about a little bit later. Yeah, so I'm a tech advisor, sustainable tech advisor, and come from SAP, where I've been working for more than 20 years. So right now I'm rallying the sustainable tech around the world. So thank you so much for having me be part of this important event.
Thanks for participating. And then I'll kick it out to you, Bradley from Singapore. What time is it in Singapore now?
It's in the afternoon, 3 o'clock.
Okay, all right.
My name is Bradley Busetto. I'm the director of the UNDP Global Center for Tech and Sustainability based here in Singapore.
Thanks. And then back to the lab here, and with me in the studio today, I have Allan Polack from PFA. Allan, just a quick intro.
Yeah, Allan Polack, and I'm CEO of PFA, the largest pension fund here in Denmark and 10th in Europe. I have a background in managing pension money, and before that I was heading asset management, so I come somehow from the industry of managing money.
And a huge supporter of Copenhagen Fintech also. So I'm gonna kick off this panel with the first question to you, Anne, because I'm super excited. I know you're in New York, as you just told us, and this is the week of the UN General Assembly. Can you give us a little bit of a situation report? You know, what's the talk of the town other than the election? I think we'll save that for another day.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a very special year, first of all, because it is the UN General Assembly 75 years anniversary. And of course, normally that will have been a big celebration, which of course it still is, but it's also the year where COVID hit the world. So it is very much about, we go from working with intentions about what we're going to do about purpose to action. So you can say the talk of the town is really how do we mobilize around all the 17 global goals, the 10 business benchmark, the SDG ambition. Also in the light of the whole COVID situation we're in, I think we all know, I know we see it in Denmark now, and we see it all over the world, the second wave of COVID is hitting in. So it's going to be an exciting week, but also a lot of conversation about execution. And this is where you can say, in the past, it's been more about what are we going to do to now what are we doing and what do we need to do. And this is where technology, sustainable tech, fintech technology is a big thing of the agenda going forward. So in a couple of hours at UN, the whole thing will start up, and it will go on this week and also next week. So a lot of stuff to tune into the next couple of weeks from UN in New York.
So next week is actually the climate week, right?
Yes.
Yeah, all right, cool.
And and just one add-on to that, as you all know, this was also the big topic last year. Big topic at Davos. Even though we have COVID going on, it is really the big topic. And we have more than 400 plus companies now with UN Global Compact who have signed up to the SDG ambition for 1.5. So there's a big focus on climate. And we also see a lot of companies coming out with huge initiatives to how to solve the whole climate issues that we have in the world. So that will definitely be on the agenda.
So maybe just to pick up a little bit on that, and because I know you mentioned the Global Sustainable Development Goals, of course, and Global Compact, but I know you have been working a lot with something that you call the SDG ambition also. Could you elaborate a bit on that also and explain to us what that actually is?
Yes. So, beginning of the year, together with the General Secretary and Lisa Kingo, I launched the SDG Ambition, which is actually three pieces. It's a framework, how to implement the sustainability into your corporation. The second piece is 10 business benchmark, which is a translation of the 17 global goals for the private sector. The 1.5 is one of them. And then the third part that is going to be launched the 22nd of September is the integration guide, how you take and actually integrate it into your business process data layer, into your technology. And this is here from a fintech perspective and technology perspective that we see that there's a huge ask to technology to come in with solid solutions to support companies in their sustainability transformation. So the SDG Ambition is really for the private sector, and it is UN Global Compact is behind it, together with the General Secretary.
All right. So moving here in the studio to you, Allan. As CEO of the largest pension company here in Denmark and one of the largest actually in Europe, whatever you do has enormous impact on the sustainability agenda. How do you manage that responsibility, and can you give some examples around, how do you actually execute on those strategies?
Yeah, first of all, we make it very clear that we are active investors. So you could say all the, whatever it is, 95 billion US dollar assets we have on, we manage actively. So we vote, etc. And if we don't like the behavior, we put these single companies on our watch list, and we engage with them in order to understand, or in the end we might exclude them from our owning list. But in parallel, of course, the most important thing is how we transfer our portfolio into companies that are particularly strong in being sustainable. And that's a policy we have had for quite some years. And we are very transparent on what we are doing. You can read it in our reporting, etc., etc. Then this summer we did a change. Pension industry is slow movers, but we did an important change that we introduced a climate fund. So we have our traditional, we are a defined contribution company. We have a traditional fund where we have risk assets, and in parallel we introduced a climate fund, which is a fund you could say, okay, let's just make another fund. No, we do new products one every 10 years. So it's a true life cycle product, so you can invest in that in all risk profiles, including when you decumulate, including, you would say, true low risk climate friendly assets. So it was quite an accomplishment. And that product now we introduce to all our 1.2 million clients. So they all have actively to decide a proportion. So it's not an either or, but it's a proportion of this fund. So in parallel, one thing is to have the fund, but maybe even more important is that it brings climate to the agenda of every single client, and of course all the advisors as well. So for me that is a quite important active step in pushing this up on the agenda towards our clients. Definitely.
So when you look at the landscape, say in the Nordics, and compare that with what's going on in Europe and maybe even the rest of the world, how do you see the Nordics holding up? Are we leading? Or?
I think you might say we are leading, and it comes from the demand from the clients. That's the most important thing. The clients were very early, pushing their, you can say, pension company, the asset manager, the fund manager, towards having a standpoint on this. That's why you have seen that some of the sustainable products in the Nordics have taken a very, very solid stand. So this is not greenwashing. These are products that fundamentally have a process. I think it's very important to have a strong commitment. In our case, the commitment, our new climate fund, is to be neutral, climate neutral in 25. I mean, we have just 5 years to be zero, and in 2030 to be actually contributing. So you could say a negative CO2 impact. And this commitment is very important in my eyes. So you move from, nice words, your intentions, to real something that can be measured. And that is so core to this next phase of sustainability, how do you measure it? And on the climate side, there are more aspects than CO2 on climate, but at least you can measure the CO2. So I think part of the next debate we all should have is how do you measure also the other components? That's not so easy.
Oh, no.
But I think that's what clients can expect for us, that they can actually see the impact of what we're doing.
So since this is a fintech conference also, what I kind of want to have your insights on is also how do you actually see technology can accelerate the sustainable agenda and corporates and startups start working together on that?
Yeah, there's a lot to do from that aspect. I think all this is about transformation. How do we transform our old world economy? And there are many drivers, but I'm particularly keen on two drivers. It's electrification and it's the digitalization. And of course, these two drivers are key to all industries. It doesn't matter really which industry, they will all be transformed through these two drivers. And of course, the fintech has an enormous role in transforming our industry to be truly more sustainable in using technology at its highest point. And we can do that.
Cool. I'll change to you, Bradley. Still on?
I am.
Good.
I hope you can still hear me.
Obviously, you being in another region or part of the world, it would be great to hear a little bit from you what problems you're solving or trying to solve, what's high up on your agenda. And I guess or at least my assumption would be that it would be a little bit more broad than just the environment.
Sure, in fact. So over the last few months, like every other part of the UN system, we've pivoted completely to trying to support countries respond and recover to COVID. And COVID is not just killing people through sickness and making people very sick in millions of people around the world, but of course disrupting food supply chains and having all sorts of other collateral effects, right? But I think it's also making everyone around the world think much more deeply about sustainability, right? And to think about sustainability not just in terms of the climate, but much more. But I think there's interesting, just to pick up something that Allan mentioned. There's a silver lining here too if we move quickly and cleverly, and that is this digitalization. I think the pandemic is driving an acceleration of digitalization around the world, not just in the rich countries. The CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, even several months ago said, well, the pandemic has accelerated the digitalization of the world. It's 5 years of digitalization, I think he said, in about 2 months. But we're thinking about that, especially in the developing world, the not so rich world, right? And the potential positive gains, and thinking about, for example, in agriculture technology, in educational technology, in telemedicine. How can we use this acceleration of digitalization in areas that really make a huge difference in poorer parts of the world? That's what we're working on. But I wanted to also especially highlight the role of fintech here, right? I think there's a huge, it's already happening, right? I mean, fintech is helping governments around the world quickly and securely get payments out to essential staff, to medical workers and so forth. Fintech's allowing people to transfer funds urgently, without physical contact. So it's already happening, and we're helping nudge that along. Some of the things we've done, we've created an open source digital toolkit for the entire world for communities and governments to sort of go on and pick out the best examples of could be contact tracing apps, it could be data systems to help health systems and so forth. So, but a couple of things that we're really excited about. We've been helping a lot of countries just in their digital preparedness, digital transformation more broadly, but especially around digital finance. I wanted to just point out two things that we're doing. One is with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which, as you know, is kind of a leader in developing ecosystems for fintech, on a digital finance program reaching out to Africa, so helping create both the ecosystems regulatory framework, but also helping spur technology. But the second one I'm super excited about is something we're actually doing with you guys, with the Copenhagen Fintech Association, which we're building this sustainable fintech bridge between Nordic and Singapore, between accelerating a cohort of sustainable fintech startups from Nordics, but also our added value is to provide sort of the impact amplification and impact scaling, and also sort of the scaling, I hope, in Asia too. And very excited to be part of that. And that's happening right now. Some of the challenges that the cohort of startups have to respond to are around like accelerating decentralized finance from the bottom of the pyramid, helping financial institutions get sustainability ratings. And so I think there's already a really cool track record from the Nordics in sustainable fintech. So my ambition too is to help, or our ambition more broadly in the UN is to help, how do we create other hubs for sustainable fintech? Not how do we certainly amplify what's happening in the Nordics, but how do we create that in Singapore, or now in Africa, for example? So I think there's huge promise. It's a horrific catastrophe of the pandemic, but there is real promise if we do it right to amplify some really good initiatives around digital transformation, and especially digital finance.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks.
And I just want to stay at just a few more minutes with you, because I know we met each other when we went to Singapore Fintech Festival last year, right? And you had the opportunity to meet some of the companies that came out of the Nordics. So just a few reflections on what it is you saw and why there's such an opportunity for the Nordics and ASEAN or Asia to work together actually in this field.
So I mean, I saw and heard about and heard use cases from Jamil Pay, like helping generate savings groups around the world. Solstrom, 100% traceable carbon offset, and then ERDP, another cool one around blockchain financial inclusion. So I just think there are more and more folks in Asia, of course, that are not just interested in sustainability, but see sustainability as sort of a core driver in their personal lives as consumers. But then you've got corporates too that more and more sustainability is at the core of their work. And just of course the huge customer base here across Asia is promising too. I'm really interested in how startups like that can help motivate and inspire similar ones here in Singapore and much more broadly across Asia. So I'm looking forward to this over the next few weeks.
All right, thanks. And then a question maybe to pick it up from Bradley also, because Bradley is talking a lot about the impact of the pandemic. So maybe a little bit from you. How did you, as a CEO of the biggest pension company in Denmark, how did you experience the pandemic and the impact on the ecosystem here?
Of course, this has been a very interesting experiment. It's really one big pilot we are running on how to interact with our clients remotely, and I think that's it's however we have judgments of the COVID-19 and what's going to do, it's happen and so on. This is from that specific angle a very positive thing, and we have learned so much through the last 6 months. And I have seen the most, let's say, conservative advisors changing completely their habits. And what it really requires to use the full digital toolbox. There are many tools that we all actually had, but were not used fully. And this is so cool. So there at least have come something positive out of these very sad months.
So it took a pandemic to change the culture a bit.
I have to admit that. I have to admit that. Yeah.
So on the maybe a little bit on the sustainable agenda, and then I'll kick it over to you, Anne, afterwards. But how did you experience the pandemic? Did it have a negative impact on the sustainable agenda, or did it actually accelerate it?
Yeah, we still don't know, Thomas, exactly what the outcome will be. But I personally think that it has a positive impact because it demonstrates how much it means when we work together. We can change things and we can change habits. So I'm quite optimistic, but the jury is, of course, still out.
Yeah, sure. So maybe a change to you, Anne. So being in the in the epicenter now at the UN General Assembly, so how how high up on the agenda is this in the US right now as you experience it, and what was the impact of the pandemic on the sustainable talk?
I think sustainability, the 17 global goals and the 10 business benchmarks and the 10 principles by UN Global Compact is equally important as they always have been. I will actually just, one thing that I wanted to say, because I know there's also a lot of Danes watching in here. I think we as Danes need to understand that, first of all, Denmark is number one on the SDGs in the world. I know we are super tiny, small country, but the world is actually looking at Denmark a lot for inspiration about the SDGs. And from a fintech perspective and technology perspective, I actually see that Denmark has an opportunity to contribute with a lot of technology solution coming out from Denmark, coming out from Nordic, just like Bradley talked about how he has been inspired by startups coming out from the Nordic. And that's also where we talked about framework. I want you all to think about the framework called Share of Life. Share of Life is really, as Bradley talked about, we have been accelerated to be much more digital. Like in a few months, we will normally have taken 5 years. Share of Life is that you lived on farms, you live in cities, now you live online. And that has a big requirement to all the new technology solutions that is being created as of today going forward. How do you detail into this? And this is where I want to mention that GSH tech agents, we will see companies like them that begin to make a portfolio of great tech startups to go out to corporations for them to really accelerate on the technology platforms. And then Stenso, for example, is one of the sustainable tech startup out of Denmark. So my wish and my hope for Denmark to the world is that we are number one on the SDGs. We have incredible knowledge about technology. We could really, really support the world right now with our knowledge and also how we work with technology. And from New York, I can only say the sustainability goals is equally important as they always have been, even though we fight COVID. New York is actually doing pretty well on COVID right now. It's actually doing better than Denmark, which is probably the first time. So it's going to be a great 2 weeks here from New York.
So a very quick one over to you, Bradley. So the sustainability agenda in Asia, how high up is it?
Look, I think it depends country by country, but I think, as I said in the beginning, I mean, any sentient being right now, it's high on their agenda because there's just so much going on. I mean, you've got COVID and around the world, you've got wildfires. So I just think across the west of the U.S. and in hunger. So I think COVID has especially been a reminder to everyone about to make sustainability front and center. I've just spent a few weeks in Japan, and Japan sustainability is becoming a bigger and bigger issue, not just with corporates, not just the government, but with consumers too. Again, as a strategic intent and not just sort of an add-on. So again, so cautiously optimistic, but that is a silver lining to it.
Thank you so much, Bradley. Thank you to you in the panel, Allan and Anne and Bradley in Singapore.